YouTube, Maximus Aquatics here. Today I want to talk about high nitrates and offer some tips, some recommendations that have worked for me as far as getting those nitrates down, keeping them under control. I've heard of a lot of people recently that are struggling with high nitrates and they're not having a lot of success as far as getting them down and keeping them in check. So I'm going to share with you a few tips that work for me and will help you keep your nitrates to a minimum. I recommend 20 parts per million or less, on a steady basis. Say you do a water test and you have 80 parts per million. You run an API test kit, you look at it and it's just bright red. Number one, don't panic, breathe. Take control of the situation, and one thing you want to remember is depending on how long you've had this nitrate issue, your fish will actually adjust to it. So you don't want to panic and do a massive water change, start cleaning everything, the filters, the sand, because that rapid swing from kind of bad to good can have detrimental effects on your fish. They just can't adjust to it quick enough, which could trigger stress, disease, sickness. So stay calm. What I recommend would be 20% water changes every day. Check your filtration. Don't clean all your filters and do the 20%. If you've got, like, say, for my setup, I have two filters running, an FX5 and an FX6. What I would do is a 20% water change on this tank, and I would clean one of the filters in a bucket of tank water. Rinse everything out, and you'll be surprised what you find, depending on when the last time you did the maintenance on that filter. Clean everything out in the bucket, and if you're dealing with a nitrate issue, it's probably going to look like chocolate milk when you're done, and you're going to kind of see why you're having the issues that you're having. So clean that filter out. Canister filters are great filters, but they are definitely nitrate traps. So if you're using canister filters, you can't see what's going on inside, kind of out of sight, out of mind. But they can be big nitrate traps. All that excess food that the fish didn't get, it gets sucked in, that's sitting in there. The waste is sitting in there, decomposing. That's going to drive your nitrates up. Another big thing, kind of the out of sight, out of mind. Under your decor, depending on what kind of decor you have, you can get the same thing. Food, waste that's trapped under there. You pick the rock up and there's just a gob of junk that comes floating out from underneath it. That's going to drive your nitrates up too. Not cleaning your sand bed. Detritus trapped in there. And, you got to vacuum your sand. Just kind of space it out. Don't panic and do it all at once. Another big thing is overstocking. Depending on what size tank you have, if you've got a 75 gallon with 50 fish in it, depending on the size of them, that's going to drive your nitrates up too. They're constantly giving off waste, and if you're not doing the weekly water changes, keeping fresh water in it, that's going to drive nitrates up, depending on how strong your cycle is. The bio load of having 50 fish in a 75 gallon, it may not be able to keep up. The waste is going to basically override the cycle, and you're going to have the problems with high nitrates. So 20% water change daily. Test on day 2. Do another 20%. Clean your filter, kind of in that day 1, day 2. You can clean your sand, check your decor, and look at your stock list. See what you're dealing with as far as maybe having too many fish in your tank. One positive note to that is that would also give you a reason to upgrade your tank, to a bigger tank that has a larger water volume that's not going to swing as quick, due to the size of the tank. I'm running a 180 gallon here. I've got 8 fish in this tank. They are bigger, so You know, that's something that has worked for me. I don't really have to overstock. I've kind of got a good mojo going, knock on wood, but that helps keep my nitrates lower. I don't have as much waste, although these guys are bigger, so they are giving off more waste. So something to think about. Overfeeding is another huge thing. You know, these guys seem to always be hungry, and it's easy to overfeed. You know, cut back on their feedings when you're doing this, you know, process of getting your nitrates down. These guys are not going to starve if you don't feed them for a day or two. I feed these guys once a day in the evening when I get home. They get one meal a day, and it's enough to where it's gone in less than 2 minutes. So that's something, you know, to think about as well. You could cut back and not feed them for a day or two while you're, you know, dealing with this, and that will help as well. And then maybe reevaluate how much you're feeding them. That will definitely help you with your nitrate issues. If you keep plants in the tank, if you have any decaying leaves, plant matter that's laying in the sand or in your substrate, you're going to want to get that out. That will drive your nitrates up. Plants are a great, you know, addition to your aquarium if you can make it work, especially with African cichlids. Those will, you know, absorb some of the nitrates. I do hear it takes, you know, a substantial amount of plants to have a, you know, a good effect on nitrates, but that is another way you can kind of keep nitrates in check if you wanted to add some plants to your tank. So if, like I said, if you're in a crisis mode, you're noticing your nitrates are high, 20% water change daily, check your filters, clean those out, get all that junk out of them, you know, back off on the feeding, you know, evaluate your feeding regimen, see if you're maybe feeding them too much, check your stock list, make sure your tank's just not overstocked, and substrate, decor, check those, make sure they're not trapping stuff, make sure you don't have any dead fish or anything in there. That will hurt you as well. So these are things that I always remember, and you know, just keep a strong maintenance regimen. You know, every week, every 2 weeks, however you do your maintenance, make sure you're doing enough to keep those nitrates down and keep them, you know, in control. Do your water tests, monitor your parameters, and you'll have a thriving tank. I hope these tips help you. They've helped me in the past with issues, and I thank you for watching.